Okay, in the first video in this unit, we talked about the basic features of Google Scholar. In this video, we'll talk about some of the more advanced features, which will help you find more useful and more recent information. The default search is sort of listed in a column on the left-hand side. And you'll see that the default search looks for articles from any time period, sorted by relevance, and any type. And that's fine for a beginning point. But sometimes you want to find, for instance, review articles. Review articles are very useful when you're beginning your work because it gathers a lot of different information in one place. It provides an overview of what has been done and what are considered future directions in this field. So if you go back to our search for EPA and DHA, you'll find that two of these in their little blurb there have the word review. And so you can identify them. But actually all four of these are review articles. They just don't show that word in the little blurb that's there. So if you want to find these more easily, you can highlight that box that says review articles. And then it will return only review articles. And that will be helpful in finding these as a starting point for your search. Another useful feature is you can find the most recent articles. And so again, if you sort by date, that will bring all of the most recent articles to the beginning. However, if you do this, some of those may not be relevant because they may contain those words, but they're not really relevant to your search. Another way that you can do this, instead of sorting by date, you can say since 2022 or the most recent year or since 2021. And also at the same time search by relevance. So this is searching for the most recent but also the most relevant. And this will then bring to the top the ones that are most recent but most closely related to your search terms. Now, if you click on that first document in the list, you'll see that this brings you to the publisher's page. And you'll note here that this is an Elsevier journal, so it's very reputable, but it's also open source. That's why we're using it as an example. And so this will show you the highlights, which give some of the main points. It shows you the outline. And if you scroll down, you'll see the abstract. And these will all help you to determine whether this is what you really want before you download the PDF. Now, another very useful thing in Google Scholar is at the bottom line, you'll see this related articles. You find one article that's really good, really suitable. And then you can find articles that are related to that have similar keywords, similar titles, but again, perhaps not always the most recent. One way to find more recent articles is cited by, and it will show how many articles have cited this particular article. But the problem with that is they're not all necessarily related. For instance, again, if we do that for this particular article, it will bring up all kinds of articles on algae and seafood that contain EPA and DHA, but don't really deal with cardiovascular disease, which was what we're really interested in. So in this case, you can start here in the cited by, but then right below that title, you'll see a line that says search within. And so that will search within these citing references for a particular term. So we can search within these for cardiovascular disease. And then the articles that it will bring up here will certainly be much more useful. Now, again, this can be limited to the most recent articles. Over on the left-hand side, you can search within the citing for particular words since 2022, and that will bring up all of the most relevant, most recent articles. So by combining these different search functions, you can get much more relevant articles for your work. Now, that being said, there are some limitations to any search engine like Google Scholar or any of the other online engines like Mendeley that do the same thing. One problem is it takes several months for the search engine to find these newly published articles. So to get the very latest articles, you have to identify key journals in your field that are most likely to publish relevant information. And if you look at those journals as they're published each month, you'll be able to get the most recent information. Another thing that you can do is create notifications. If you create a team account and then save these articles to that team account, then Google Scholar will automatically notify you when similar articles are published. And this can be something that can help your team keep up with the most recent articles without having to constantly go back and look and check. But now we're going to talk a little bit about some of the issues related to finding information. Okay, so since we're in different fields, probably your students have slightly different problems finding information than students would in science. So what problems have your students had in finding information, and how did they overcome those?
In humanities and social sciences, we are very concerned about our founding fathers of certain theoretical frameworks or certain terminology. So we need to find whom to cite. That's why, theoretical framework is usually what we are looking for. And then the next problem is our students are usually not familiar with all those journals. They don't know which journal is reputable. So as their professor, their advisor, we have to provide a list of reputable journals in our specific field for them to search. And this will also avoid citing predatory journals. So in other words, the professors have to do a lot of work.
So that's very much like science, the second problem. But the first one is very different because in science, we very rarely cite people who are the founding fathers of the field, or certainly much less than in social science. There are very few references beyond 5 or 10 years, whereas in social science, you're much more likely to cite much older studies.
Exactly. In addition to Google Scholar, we also need to find theses and dissertations in Taiwan so that our students can find who has done what. And they can also follow the links to see those advisors who advised certain topics and go find what they have to say in other publications.
Okay, so that's very useful and I'm sure will be helpful, particularly to, again, human resources and other things that are dealing with the social issues related to iGEM or other issues.